Hello and welcome to the Shamans Cave. My name is Renee Baribeau. I'm known as the Practical Shaman, coming to you from Whidbey Island. And
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Ingerman and I'm coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico.
you gotta love technology, right? That we can have our awesome conversations together. I'm here, you're there. I think that really opens us up to what we're going to talk about today is how do we access non-ordinary reality, right? And for me, this is non-ordinary because I always feel like I'm having coffee or tea with Sandra every week.
Right. Yeah, so our show is actually more than opening up into non-ordinary reality. It's how do we open up our non-ordinary senses? And so, well, we're all aware that we see, most of us, of course, there are people who don't have that ability. We hear, we smell, we taste, we feel. We're all aware of that. But the place where people get stuck when they enter into the shamanic world, and some people actually stay stuck there for their whole entire life and their whole entire practice, because you can journey and not be completely open with your senses, but you're going to be very limited on the miracles that you're going to get with your work and in your own life. And so I always use the same example, and I was talking to Renee about this a couple of weeks ago, of there was, most of you probably remember that there was a devastating tidal wave that killed so many people in Thailand. And it was many, many years ago, and a huge number of humans died. But what was really interesting about that tidal wave and about the loss that occurred is the only beings that died were humans, because all the animals had already gotten the message in their body that the tidal wave was coming, and they all moved to higher ground. And the beings in the sea moved as much as they could. I know that there was some loss, but moved as much as they could because they knew what was coming. And there are endless stories of those of you I know, students of mine in California, who right before an earthquake, I have a lot of students who have snakes, and their snakes go crazy before the earthquake happens. And we know the same thing happens with dogs. You know, they're already picking up that something's getting ready to happen. For us, we all get feelings in our bones. Ooh, I have a feeling that I shouldn't take this particular road today. I take it every day to work, but today I have a feeling that I shouldn't take it. And then you find out there was a terrible accident on that road and you wouldn't have made it to work on time. So the point is that every living creature is born with ordinary senses where we experience the world here in a particular way, but we also have these non-ordinary senses that inform us not just about times of danger, but allow us to open up to a part of the world that's always occurring around us that we have just simply shut down to.
Hmm. And now it's probably even more important than ever with things like the 5G network coming in that they say is absolutely going to play with the birds' ability and their sonar and their radars and stuff like that, that it's going to interrupt that. So it's even more important that you know where you're getting where you're sourcing from, how that information is feeding to you. And I've been watching the eagles for a few days, and they were gone for a few weeks, and now they're all back. And I guess they go off to eat in some river the salmon when it's, going upstream, and then they come back and get ready to hunker down in their nests. And so they're absolutely in tune to, their finer senses. I think back to one of my first spiritual experiences was a fire walk in the woods. I think I've talked about it before with a nun. And there was a guy the story they told us about the guy who burnt his feet. And he thought, they were like, oh my God, let's take care of it. And he was like, no, this is the greatest lesson. I never listened to my intuition. And right before you walk over the fire, your question, right before you walk, you're supposed to ask, am I supposed to walk? And in my case, I saw myself dancing over the coals, which I did. And in his case, he was told not to walk, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes those lessons can be very hard when you don't listen. And so knowing how you get messages is first, for me, key. And then how many times you listen, or how many times you say, oh, I should have listened, before you really start to listen, is part of the work of your initiations and becoming more involved with who you are as a shamanic practitioner, or how you live in harmony with nature.
Yeah, and a lot of this lack of awareness of our invisible senses, I really love how it's talked about how in South America, when the indigenous people walk through the forests, they actually walk through with eyes throughout their entire body. Their entire body is walking eyes. And so you can only imagine all the things that they're seeing. And dragonflies actually have 30,000 eyes. So you can only imagine what they're seeing. I mean, they see different colors than we do. They see perspectives of life that we're just going to always be blind to. They were born as these evolved creatures that just have another experience of life. But let's look at the core of what happened to us, and how did we stop losing? How did we start to lose our access to our non-ordinary senses? Because we were born with them. All babies, all children, they know what's going on. They're watching with their invisible eyes. They're hearing with their invisible ears. They're tuned into a whole different reality than we are. And so in our culture, we're constantly fed through images coming to us through the computer. We're constantly fed through images coming to us through movies, the TV, magazines, and then everybody's walking around with those earbuds in their ears. Sometimes I wonder, is everybody deaf because they start to talk to them and what? And an earbud comes out. And so people are only listening to other songs. And from a shamanic point of view, we all have our own song. And having your own song is one of the most important aspects of shamanic work. Well, how do you get to listen to your own song when 24/7 you're listening to music that's just being piped into your ears? Where would you get the space to be able to hear yourself when you're always hearing something that's piped in? We watch things on the media that tug at our heart, that keep us from the knowledge of how we're truly feeling, because the stories are written and told in a way that will intentionally manipulate how we're feeling. So we're so flooded with all this input from what we see and hear, and what we're supposed to feel, what we're supposed to eat. Who knows what their body wants anymore? Because everywhere you look, you're being told what to eat, and that changes on a weekly basis. Eat this, it's safe for you, and it's going to change your life, and it's going to cure every single illness. We just found out that this particular product causes cancer. But what did your body want? How would you even know what your body wants when that material where it is being so flooded. So for me, it comes down to making a decision to not always unplug. I like to go to the movies, and I watch way too much TV. I'm going to admit that. I'm embarrassed, but I do. And but I spend a lot of time in silence. And that's what my walks are about for me, being able to walk in nature. I am not aware of anything in my ordinary proximity. I am looking out for omens, but I'm more walking with my eyes half closed, and I'm listening with my invisible ears, and I'm seeing with my invisible eyes, and I'm letting the light of my heart guide me. And so we all have to make priorities of when do you just unplug so that you can let your own innate invisible senses start to re-engage. And that's just going to take a while. And we want everything so fast in our culture. Are you willing to have the patience to let your senses wake back up again? But I mean, I can't imagine anybody saying no to that question, because we miss out on so much life when we're living in a two-dimensional world, and that means how we use our senses too.
Absolutely. I thinking about this pie chart that I used to make about how I spend time, and you could adapt that to, how where your sensory awareness is coming in. Like, how many hours do you spend cooking, and how many hours do you spend in nature, and how many hours are you spending watching TV, or, on your computer doing work, and just kind of take a judge, like a snapshot of where you are now. Because what I realized when I was 30, and I go back to that time a lot because I was really broken. And then I realized somewhere along the line, I realized, well, if I spent the next 30 years healing, then I was going to have this wide expanse of time in my life, because I didn't get that messed up in one day. It took me, a good 30 years to make the mess that I was living in. So if it took 10, 15, 20 years to unwind that, how glorious that I had all of that extra time where I'd be able to enjoy these walks in nature, cooking with a friend for a few days, making pumpkin custard, because I saw a pumpkin in the pumpkin patch when I was out in nature, that, wow, this is going to be great to bake, because those stimuluses, those things that we see can inform the next move. One time I started painting sticks, and then I learned how to paint on a canvas, but it was what I found in nature that started to inform my next moves. And because that's where the sensory exploration comes for me, is like, how does the day shape itself when I don't have any strict agenda about how I've got to give ceremony this and meditation this. I was doing these Swami practices, and they sit down at 4 a.m. every day and do, 1.5 million mala beads. Wasn't for me. I liked a lot of what they were teaching, but I just couldn't sit there. And then somebody pointed out, Renee, your meditations come when you're walking.
Mm-hmm.
I had never given myself permission that I, couldn't sit cross-legged like a Buddha. Maybe I've done that 100 times. Who knows? But that's not who I am this time. And when I try to squeeze into somebody else's idea of how to open up my sensory, it never worked.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to fit into other people's boxes. I think we did a show on taking shamanism out of the box, because we're always trying to fit into somebody else's box. And that goes back to our non-ordinary senses, because your non-ordinary senses are your innate senses that you were born with, that you have to discover for yourself. So are you going to now start reading books on how to open up your non-ordinary senses, or start taking courses when you were born with that? It's already in you, and it's all about finding your way, of whether it's sitting by a pond, or sitting on a hill or a mountain and gazing. You know how you gaze out and all of a sudden all this information comes to you that your inner landscape, it's just been waiting for just a minute of stillness so it could give you this gem. And you get that as you gaze out. Or shamans used fire, you know, they would stare into the fire for hours as a way of divination and opening up. And listening to the wind and walking in the wind. These are all ways that bring us into another state of reality that remove us from the chaos of the collective, because I'm not going to say it's impossible to open up your non-ordinary senses if you're fully always in the collective with your earbuds on and watching videos 24/7. I'm sure some of you can do that. You have the mastery, but in my experience, it takes quiet. It takes quiet and creating space. And I remember before 9/11 happened, and I was taking my walks every day. Every day I went out and the wind told me something was getting ready to happen and it was going to be big. And every day the wind told me the same thing and made it real clear that it wasn't going to happen to me, but whatever was going to happen was really big. And there was a store in Santa Fe in the United States. I know many of you are watching from other countries. In the US, we have stores where you can go to mail things instead of the post office. And I went into one of those mail stores and the guy said to me, you know, I don't know what it is, but I'm getting that something really, really big is getting ready to happen. Are you getting something like that? And I just looked at him and I said, yes. And the next week, 9/11 took place. And we all get these messages. But you have to, well, you don't have to do anything. My advice to you would be unplug.
I'm going to say wholeheartedly that I have a hard time believing that anyone who's tapped into a headset all day long or engaged in video games is tapping into the world of nature that I believe we need to tap into in order to live in harmony over the next few decades here on this earth. They're tapping in somewhere. And clearly those realities are alternate to the ones that we're here talking about, I hope, because I just can't even imagine stepping into that matrix for myself, because I'm like Sandra, I love the quiet. I thrive on the quiet. When I wrote a book before I wrote Winds of Spirit called The Shaman Chef, How Cooking Saved My Life. And it's, if you read the recipes, you'll be thinking like, well, you eat this, you're going to die of a heart attack. But it wasn't about the cooking, the recipes in there. And I'm sure before, I can't publish it until after my mother's gone. But what I do know is that the act of becoming present to the food and chopping the vegetables and having a relationship was what opened my spiritual channels enough to hear the message from the nun about the fire walking.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that way in for you is your unique way, but are you enforcing that? Are you practicing that? Are you building upon that way? What in the last few years, for me, it's been the wind walks. I mean, I'm not one who sees a lot of colors or hears things per se, but somehow the information that the winds was feeding me got me into all of the right places to assemble a book. And I don't exactly know how all of that happened, but I do know that there was a trajectory that wasn't my force that merged with my forces so that we could create something other.
Mm-hmm.
That is, like Sandra knows, she's written books, that it's not, when you write a book, it becomes a vessel that isn't you.
Right. Yeah, no, you're bringing up amazing points, really good points. And I hope your mother has a long and healthy life, but dying to read your book once.
Yeah, well, what I've learned since then is that I didn't have the full story, because at that time we didn't have ancestry DNA, so I hadn't found out about all the relatives I didn't know about. And so there's a lot more to the story. And so that would have been one, that brings me to this, that's only one pie. That's only one slice of the pie, when there's this whole other world. And I keep asking myself, well, if you don't know about the rest of the world, is it still part of the story? It's like, so as we tap into these realms, and I think I've said before, is like, it took me a while to open up my senses. It did. I thought I needed to go hike to Chile and to hike to Peru and hike, because remember, the woman told me my destiny would find me at 30, took till 50. So I amused myself, running up mountains. But I don't know if I amused myself or what, but truly, I wonder if I had done it a different way, if I would have still gotten the same message. I'm not sure. But still, I put myself in places in nature where I had to understand that there was silence. One of the things I love here about Whidbey, and we live at a dead end, is the energetics of silence.
Mm.
There's an energy of silence that permeates my whole soul when I can douse myself into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like Santa Fe. The energy just is so deep here, because everything that's alive here, the trees and the plants, have to grow so deep to be able to get their nurturance and to get their water. And so what I found, and this could be another show, what I found is where you live really informs your body of whether you go deep or whether you're like the ocean and exuberant all the time. But it's true, the land will really inform you. That's a really important point.
Yeah, we'll have to do a show on astrocartography without the astro part. For me, because I thought I was moving to Mexico, and I was bounced off of that mountain to the desert, where when I finally, I resisted going. It was like the job ended in New Mexico, and I had to be forced for the move. And all of a sudden, then I realized, when I was driving up the road one day, all of a sudden I felt the mountain growing up in me.
Mm.
Like, where you live, do you feel the land as part of you? And that would be a really great place to start. And I think Sandra has an exercise that we're going to do to
Mm-hmm.
experience this as well. But do you feel all of the nature as part of your being is the question that I would like to leave you with before we do our journey.
Yeah, while Renee was talking, I'd like to lead us on a journey, but I'd love to give you a really short exercise that I shared in my very first book, Soul Retrieval. And this particular exercise really helped me to start to open up to my own intuitive knowing. And it's not going to open you up to your non-ordinary senses, as we're talking about. I'll lead you on a journey to try and help you reflect on how you can do that. But this particular exercise works really great when you're trying to figure out, is my mind telling me something, or is my intuition telling me something? And it's a really simple exercise. It was taught by a participant in a class I took while I was going for my master's in counseling psychology. I took a year program training in Gestalt therapy and feminist therapy. And there was a woman who taught us this exercise, and it was brilliant. And I, with her permission, I've been teaching it ever since. And I use it myself every day, even though I trust my intuition. And so what you do is you sit down and you close your eyes and you think about something that you really love, something really simple. your favorite food, your favorite color, your favorite flower. Don't make it more complex than that. It's got to be that simple. And you close your eyes and you say, I love. And so I love roses, love roses. So I close my eyes and I say, I love roses. And I feel what happens in my body. And then I get up and I go out of the room and I empty a waste paper basket or put some dishes away. Again, something simple, very simple task. And then I come back down and I sit down and I say to myself, I hate roses. And I notice the feeling that I get in my body when I tell myself a lie. Mm. And that starts to help you discern, is this coming from my intuition? And so for me, my brain is so literal. When a truth is being told, I actually see a green light, like a stop in a stoplight, when you get to an intersection. And when I'm telling myself a lie, that light turns red. And so when I'm trying to make a decision, I only follow the decision that turns into green. I never followed the decision that turned into a red light. And because the green light means this is what my intuition was telling me to do. And the red light meant that this was just my ego, my personality, my mind, and it was going to lead me in the wrong place. And I've been doing this exercise for over 30 years, and it's never led me astray yet. So that's a simple, if you're looking for what is a very first place, I like what Renee and Sandra are saying, but I don't even know where to start. Start there, and it works really well. So I'm going to lead you on a journey. And one of the things about opening up our non-ordinary senses is when I drum on screen and I'm looking at the screen, how am I supposed to open up to my non-ordinary senses? Because the screen is feeding me an image. And so that immediately blocks me. And so it's really important when you do shamanic journey work to find a way to put something over your eyes and to get into a quiet space where you don't have a lot of outside distractions. And so for those of you who have not learned shamanic journeying yet, what I would say is during the drumming, imagine yourself leaving your front door and sitting in a beautiful place in nature, and look around and reflect on how you can slow your life down and unplug a bit so that you can start opening up to your own non-ordinary, invisible senses and trust your intuition more. Those of you who do know how to journey, you can travel to a helping spirit that you trust and ask the question, what changes do I need to make in my life that will help me unplug from a two-dimensional world and will allow me to enter into the richness of my invisible senses, as shamans and people all over the world have done for tens of thousands of years. So here we go. Welcome back, everyone. And again, we know that the journeys that we lead are short, but it gives you the opportunity to practice in between our shows, to go deeper with the work that we have planted seeds for you for.
I don't know about all of you at home, but one of the things when Sandra was talking about red and green lights, that's just not how I necessarily perceive things. So I see as a tug forward or a tug back when for me. And so in this journey, there was just like this, oh, this settling. This is like, oh, we just have to let ourselves settle, or I have to let myself settle into that spaciousness to start to perceive.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's brilliant. I think that is the answer is, we're outside of ourselves. So how do we listen to our non-ordinary senses when we're not even inhabiting our full body? And what you got, I think, is the core answer. So thank you.
Yeah, please share your answers that you got too. And, how do you perceive? Share it over on the wall of the Shaman's Cave or on our YouTube channel. And if you want to receive this in your inbox, go over to shamanstv.com where all of our episodes are stored. And we almost have a whole year's worth of episodes. We're really close to our anniversary. We're going to have to do some big anniversary celebration or something for 1 year of the Shaman's Cave.
We will have to do. I'm going to start thinking about that now.
I know. Wait for that ceremony, the ceremony of ceremonies.
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope that you're enjoying the show and that this is bringing a lot of knowledge and ways to start to bring harmony and balance back into your life again. Because if you're always staying plugged into the collective, you're always going to be missing out on some of the richest parts of your life. And some of the richest parts of your life is being able to walk through the world like the people in South America with eyes all over your body. Imagine the difference of what you would be experiencing versus what you're experiencing right now. It's not about judging your way of life. It's looking about, is there a deeper and richer way of living your life that's going to bring you more meaning and joy? So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sandra.